Nahoo, 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 Nahoo.
Greetings. I'm in the French Embassy in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. In the coming few minutes, we will be having an interview with His Excellency, Ambassador Extraordinaire and Plenipotentiary, Ambassador Remi Marechaux. He is the Ambassador of France to Ethiopia, as well as he's the permanent delegate and representative of the Republic of France to the African Union. So please stay put. Thank you. Greetings. This is Brook Hailu Beshach, and I have with me a very distinguished senior diplomatic personality. He is going to be our first guest in a new program that we started in Nahoo TV, and that program is called Diplomatic Corner. The very purpose and mission and goal of the Diplomatic Corner is to invite high-profile ambassadors, foreign dignitaries, leaders, people who are engaged in foreign policy and diplomacy. And also, we will focus on Ethiopian relations with other countries. Today, our focus of attention will be none other than the age-old relations with the Republic of France. The Ethiopian-French relation goes back to 125 years. As a matter of fact, this year, 2022, the embassy is engaged in a series of events where this historical period is commemorated, and so as to promote, and not only to promote, but to make aware the Ethiopian public how far and how rich and how deep the multifaceted relations between the Ethiopian people and the French people, as well as the two sovereign nations of France and Ethiopia. Therefore, today in my maiden program, I have with me His Excellency Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, Ambassador Remi Marechaux. I'm honored to be with you, Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador. I thank you for your time, for your attention, and for agreeing to be our first guest. And Mr. Ambassador, could you please tell us about yourself? I know that you assumed your ambassadorship position in October 2020. If you could just, to start off the interview, tell us about your background, about your life, professional and otherwise. I'll be honored to hear you that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I wish to thank you myself. I'm very honored to be the first guest of this new program. So as you said, my name is Remi. I've been working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for 30 years now. And by choice, by personal decision, I decided to specialize in Franco-African relations. So I took Swahili at university. I served in many African countries. I served as ambassador in Kenya and Somalia. But I had also many different positions in the French system. I was Director General for Africa. I used to serve also the diplomatic cell of President Sarkozy. I served with our development agency and all the many works you can do around Africa. And as I like to say to my Ethiopian colleagues, when you specialize in Africa like I do, being assigned, being posted to Addis Ababa is like a Muslim going to Mecca. It's not only the political capital of Africa, but you alluded to it. It's also the country with which we have the oldest relation, and there's no other country in Africa with which we have such a long-standing partnership. And this embassy is our oldest embassy on the continent.
Wonderful. Really, it's an honor to hear it from the horse's mouth, how far and how rich the Franco-Ethiopian relation is. And not only that, if I could add something, the generation before me, my father's generation, before the Second World War, in Ethiopia, when modern education was introduced, students were taught in French. My father and all his generation spoke French at that time. And then, of course, the Italian invasion And then there was a 5-year period, then switched to Italian. And then after that, of course, once Ethiopia was liberated, because of the 1945 consequences, Anglais or English became global. So now we speak English, but still the presence of France is well marked throughout Ethiopia, which we're going to discuss about. So I agree with you. And it is really great to know that you have in Ethiopia the oldest embassy. You know, France is well represented throughout Africa, but for us, it means that it has a special place in France, in Franco-Ethiopian history. Now, if we move to the next question, and that is, of course, you deal with bilateral relations, of course. So for now, we deal with bilateral relations. How do you assess the Ethiopian Franco or France relations? It is multifaceted. You are involved in so many things. If you could just give us a good assessment of that.
Okay, thank you very much. No, first of all, I'd like to underline this long-standing partnership. So you mentioned 125th anniversary of diplomatic relation. This is the symbol we put on the kakemono behind you, that we grew during this 125 years, very strong roots. And if we celebrate this year, it's not to simply remember the past, but it is to build on the past. And because of these very solid, powerful roots, we can build and have ambitious projects for the future. So this relation is unique in many aspects, not only the long-standing component, but also that in Ethiopia and at the request of Ethiopian leadership, we focused our relation on education. So you mentioned it, the tradition, but it continues. We still have the Lycée Gebre Mariam in Addis, which already produced more than 5,000 Ethiopian alumni. But the future is a university partnership, and we are building new university partnership between French and Ethiopian university in order to have many more Ethiopian students in France, but also, and this will happen this year, some French students coming for a semester in Ethiopian university. So to build on this, and we recently revived our cooperation with the Vet College of Bishoftu. So education remains an important point at the request of the Ethiopian authorities. What is also specific is our cooperation in the field of heritage. So we were very much honored by Prime Minister when he asked us to get involved in the preservation and restoration of the Lalibela churches. So the project has started with very detailed studies, scientific studies to be presented to UNESCO in order to be in capacity to replace the existing shelter by lighter shelters that could be built and maintained by Ethiopian, the same way we have started the restoration work by the training of Ethiopian craftsmen that will be then in charge of maintaining the site. And the most important part is maybe the economic activities that will derive from this project. The potential, the development of tourism is very huge. And just to give you an example, Lalibela on an annual basis before COVID used to host 40 to 45,000 visitors, which is the same amount of the Eiffel Tower in 2 days.
No.
Yes. So we don't think that a mass tourism should be developed because the site must be protected, but definitely the potential is huge. To multiply the number and to create jobs on the site. So that will be the third component of it. So that's, I said, culture, heritage, but we are also strongly dedicated to support the reform. So the economic reform, we have granted some financing to support this reform. We have also a strong technical assistance team working with the Ministry of Finance and other agencies. So we are very much aware of the huge economic potential of Ethiopia and our contribution to the reform aimed at unleashing this potential on the field of economic presence. We can still do much better. We have only 55 French companies with some recent investment, especially in agro-business. and we're fully in line with the strategy of the government of substitution to import. So we have started. We have the capacity to do much more. We have also started some major investment in the field of energy with the development of geothermal energy, because most of the Ethiopians are focused on dam, especially a big one. But the potential of geothermal electricity is huge, more than 10,000 megawatts. And the first major project is funded by a French investment fund. The third major aspect of interest to us is logistics. Because if you want to unleash the Ethiopian potential, you need to improve the efficiency of the corridor. And we have some world-renowned expert company which are very much interested in working in that field.
Wonderful, a whole lot of points. Thank you for really sharing with our audience the involvement of France in this sector. And if I could add some more to generate more, discussion. Lycée Gebre Mariam is well known in Ethiopia. I mean, every Ethiopia is a household name, and we also kid about it. And when we discuss and say, they not only learn French but also good English. So when you have the graduates, they could fit in anywhere. So.
Yes, it's even more than this. So it's known by the public as a French school, but the reality is that it's a public Ethio-French school. So we have committed to have 70% of Ethiopian students. So 70%. So this school is different from other French school outside of France, because the first goal was not to provide education to the children of expatriates. The first goal, when the school was created at the request of Haile Selassie in 1947, was to provide education to Ethiopians.
Very true.
And that's why the Ethiopian students have a dual curriculum. So it's sometimes heavy. So they do the Ethiopian national curriculum in Amarinya, and they do the French one. So when they graduate, they can either continue here or to go to any university in the world. But my point is simply to recall that this school is also an Ethiopian school. It's a public Ethio-French school, and we can preserve and develop it with the support of the Ethiopian government.
Exactly, well explained. And if I could add, in 1966, when Charles de Gaulle, the hero and the father of the Fifth French Republic, came for a visit, the two gentlemen and good age-old friends, Emperor Haile Selassie and President Charles de Gaulle, also signed an agreement.
You're right.
That's very historical, really. That's very historical. Thank you for your elaboration. Moving to the economic one, I was really, surprised when I found out that by 2018, 2019, the rank was 15 in economic relations, fifth. And 600-something million euros were involved in that process. And of course, it goes without saying that France plays a major role when it comes to the Ethiopian Airlines, especially sort of, putting a second leg. And that is, Boeing is, of course, an age-old plane that we use, but Airbus as well. And could you say something about that? I mean...
No, you're right. I mean, we have it's another area in which we have a long-standing relation. Maybe the Ethiopians do not know it, but the first plane to ever land in Ethiopia was a French plane, which landed in Jan Meda, so not very far. And so we had over the past year many relations with Ethiopian Airlines. So it's not only Airbus, but what you just pointed out is true. Is that the reason why our bilateral trade is so important is because of the French export of Airbus plane, especially the A350-900, which has been acquired by Ethiopian Airlines, and still many other planes that will soon be delivered to Ethiopian Airlines. But we have partnership with Ethiopian Airlines, at least business relation with many other French companies. For instance, for the onboard TV that people are watching, it's a French company. Also for the ties, the reactors, and so on. So we will use the opportunity of this 125th anniversary to celebrate the past, what we've done in the past in the field of transportation, but also to see for the future about this partnership between Ethiopian Airlines and many French companies.
Great, great, great. Thank you. Now, moving to the, say, the military aspect, Prime Minister Abiy, a new chapter was opened in Ethiopia in 2018 with the coming to power of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. A new chapter, why I say is that the hope was again there for Ethiopia, a new opportunity. There was at least 3 years to 4 years of disturbance in the country, and finally that culminated with his coming to power. And the joy of the people was that a new chapter is opened. And in that regard, in the Franco-Ethiopian relation, I think it was in October 2018 that he visited Paris. And that was also remarkable. Among the few countries that he visited after his assumption of power, France was the issue, and that was reciprocated also in March 2019 by President Macron. Among the relations and agreements that was signed in March 2019 was a military one, where France agreed, to play a decisive role in the re-establishment of the Ethiopian Navy. And regarding this and related security issues, if you could say a few words on that.
First of all, in order to answer this question, you need to keep in mind that the largest French military base outside of France is just in Djibouti, neighboring Ethiopia.
Absolutely.
And for years, we've been proposing to develop military cooperation with Ethiopia because we face the same challenges. So basically, when the Ethiopian National Defense Forces are deployed in Somalia to fight Al-Shabaab, affiliated to Al-Qaeda, they're confronted with the same challenges in terms of improvised explosive device, how to operate a forward operating base, and which are the same challenges that we confronted with in Sahel, where we are also involved in the fight against the same enemy. So there was always an opportunity to exchange experience, because any terrorist tactic that be developed in Somalia will then end a few months later in Sahel, and we had a common interest in sharing and developing this military cooperation. For many years there was some reluctance on the Ethiopian side, because as you know, maybe better than me, Ethiopians are very much knowledgeable on everything and sometimes do not need any assistance. But with Prime Minister Abiy being appointed Prime Minister, there was a major shift, and we started cooperation in many other fields, military cooperation. So you mentioned the rebuilding of a navy. But there was also the modernizing of the Air Force, and also support to a long-standing Ethiopian tradition, which is taking part in peacekeeping operation. So our goal was to train the first crew of the first Navy ship. So many Ethiopian soldiers were taken on board of French Navy ship in the Indian Ocean, sent to our schools, and so this program is now suspended because of the crisis in the north, because of the war. But we're quite confident that with the implementation of the commitment made by the government in terms of humanitarian access, in terms of political solution, in terms of accountability, we'll be in capacity to resume this program as soon as possible.
Yeah, very true, very true. Well said. Ethiopia has its own stake in the Horn of Africa. So also is France, well placed in Djibouti. There is a common interest among the two countries in the fight against Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda also, and also we'll come to the G5 Sahel a bit later on from a different angle. But for now, yes, there is a common interest, and France, and there is a collaboration and cooperation with between the two militaries, and maybe intelligence and security as well, as needed, of course. Thank you for explaining that. Now, one thing is for sure, the military cooperation is long-lasting. We remember in history the top Ethiopian generals and officers, some went to Sansur, the best of the best. And some of our civil servants, they went to École Normale Politique. France has had a well-elaborated, well-organized institution to train the civil service, popularly called the bureaucracy, quote-unquote. So Ethiopia has benefited over the years. And the first Ethiopian intelligentsia, or the intellectuals who came back to their country and who served in a very distinguished way in the diplomatic corps, most were, French educated, including the last Prime Minister of Emperor Haile Selassie, Aklilu Habtol.
Yes.
He was married to a French lady. That's also a piece of a good, colorful history of Ethiopia, I would say. And artists as well, prominent artists, painters in Ethiopia. I know of one individual, at least personal closeness, that some went in Bodazar, wonderful place, still is. That's the place. So it's in arts, in military, in security, in foreign policy. The mutual interest and the mutual need is there. So just to say on that. Now moving into other questions, the next one will be, now we are under the second term of President Macron. Congratulations to him, of course, he and his party. I know that we cannot dwell on internal matters for sure, because diplomats are soldiers, but I had also served as a diplomat, so our duty is to serve the nation based on the public policies designed, given to us from the power to be. Given that, of course, but still, I'm sure you'll care to comment on that. What shall we expect from the second term of President Macron? Of course, he has to form the government. French has a semi-presidential system. Election is going to be held for the Assemblée Nationale in June, I believe.
In June. That's it. That's correct. Yes.
The parties had the election results had to be known, and then there is this horse trading, so to speak, in politics, where the parties will try to form by their own or with a coalition with other forces. We had to wait for that, but at least we have heard of in his first term the French policy of Macron. He has his own brand. If you could start with that.
No, thank you. I just want to come back on your introduction. It is true that as a civil servant, we cannot comment on internal policy. This is the way our system is organized, that the civil servant, they serve the state, whoever the president is. And so we have no spoil system like in other countries, other democracies. So, I served as an advisor to President Sarkozy, but I was appointed ambassador by President Hollande, then by President Macron. So that's
wonderful.
So that's how I cannot comment in details of internal politics. What you mentioned about the foreign policy, so in our institutional system, it's still, even if we have to wait for the parliamentary election to know who will be our next prime minister, it's an area in which there's always traditionally the leadership of the president. And we don't anticipate any major change, but the deepening of what has been started. And what was important in recent years, and especially during the first mandate of President Macron, is that we were all confronted with crises, especially the COVID crisis, and he always recalled our very strong attachment to the multilateral system, and that's very important. So we're very committed to protect it, to revive it. Because we consider it is the existing system that has to be maybe reformed and strengthened. It is the best way to promote the common interest of the 193 members of the United Nations. So that was the case. I mean, in dealing with the climate challenges. France was at the forefront of the multilateral efforts with the Paris Conference and the Paris Agreement, but more recently it was the case with the COVID crisis. So we did our very best to organize a multilateral response to the crisis, to avoid that any countries use, this access to technology and vaccine to conduct vaccine diplomacy, but work more on the common good. So we managed to put in place, together with our major partners, a multilateral answer, which allowed to provide vaccine to the countries in need, but also, especially in Africa, to support the initiative of an African health sovereignty to produce a vaccine in Africa. So this this multilateral approach is also the same we're attached to regarding the consequences of the Ukraine invasion and all the, especially in Africa, but not only in Africa, regarding the increase of the prices of agriculture commodities, especially in Ethiopia, oil. And so the best way to answer this crisis is once again to resort to a multilateral answer. And together with our German partners, we proposed a multilateral answer, so involving WFP, FAO, the World Bank, the Africa Development Bank, so that the efforts can be made in the north, benefit to all those in need, and not only the countries that you're close to have a real multilateral approach. So that's one aspect. As you know, President Macron is a very strong believer of the European Union adventure. And France, as a founding member of the European Union, is maybe one of the best places to testify that this endeavor, this decision to build a unity of many different countries, provided us the longest period of peace and prosperity that we ever enjoyed. So now the challenge is to strengthen, to deepen this unity. I think that all the member citizens of countries belonging to the European Union realize that confronted with crisis, the EU is the best way to protect the EU citizen and to promote their interests. So we have a lot of challenges. It's difficult to work at 27. So we have the goal of a budget convergence, some kind of coordination. We have also the goal to develop a strategic approach in addition to the union we already have dealing with trade and politics.
Yeah, I stand to be corrected, but as far as I know, the EU presidency is under France this year, I think.
Yes, this is a 6 months rotating presidency. It has started in January.
It goes to June,
of July.
end of June.
Yes.
So France would have more leverage and more leadership role, I think, to work as a team, of course.
No, that's true. That's true. We're in capacity to propose initiative. That's true.
As to the Ukraine and Russian crisis, we'll come back to it. But following on the what shall we expect from the foreign policy of President Macron, from the general, if we focus sort of on a specific African continent, because France has a long age-old attachment with African peoples, African. The African countries, both under colonialism and post-independence era, still plays a role in that. President Macron has a sort of, I would say, an African policy, but a changed one. Mm-hmm. He sees Africa in a globalized Africa, in a globalized world.
True.
That's unique.
True. That's true.
In the past, if I may say so, Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, all the government, I would say, that came before him, they focused on, strengthening the bond, whether it's CFR, the West African franc, but he wants to change it,
Yes.
He has started the process of dismantling it, That's unique. But all others, they want to strengthen like the umbilical cord, the economic and political tie, and the military security tie with mother France, so to speak, as haute mer, of course, in the past. That's unique from what I have understood it. Shall we see a continued path or a movement in that direction in regard to Africa?
I think we should see a deepening of what he has announced at the beginning of this first mandate. So he delivered a very important speech in Ouagadougou in November 2017, which was his program for the first mandate, and which also gives the line for the future. What people should understand is why this relation are so deep. You mentioned history, but history is not a full explanation. It's if you had only one explanation, that's human link. That Ethiopians should know that 15% of the French citizens are of African descent.
So that's Moroccans,
North Africa, West Africa, but also the Indian Ocean. So this human link are creating these very strong bonds. And even if any new government would decide to stop efforts dedicated to the African continent, the link will remain very strong. So that's it. That's the reason why we have for for the 54 African countries which are member of the UN, we have 50 embassies. So we are all around. We have several hundred thousand French citizens living in Africa. We have more than 6,000 French companies present in Africa. So all this relation are very strong. And the idea of President Macron, as you just explained, was to review, to modernize this relation, to have a continental approach. And you mentioned his state visit to Ethiopia, but he also went to Kenya, South Africa, to many countries that have no traditional link with France. And regarding the long-standing relation with French-speaking countries, he tried, as you said also, or at least he initiated reforms of the existing links. So that's you gave the example of the CFA franc. That's a monetary cooperation, and he said soon after his election that he was ready to transform anything African partners would like to transform. And this is what happened in West Africa. So the monetary cooperation has been changed. So the system is fully 100% under control of the African head of state. They no longer hard currency African reserve in France, and that's so the system has changed, and we also wish to change the rest of the traditional link, including military cooperation, the way we work together with African partners in strengthening their security. What should be understood is that we started by assessing our joint interest. And in order to have a fruitful and transparent policy, you must first assess your interest and then work in a transparent manner together with the partner to promote the common interest. And this is what President Macron has started and will continue. But there are important points regarding the human relation, just to give you two examples. So as we speak, we have 380,000 foreign students in France, of which 50% are African. So it's more than 170,000. And the idea of President Macron is to provide access to African students to the French higher education system in Africa. Because we all know that the demographic of the not only Ethiopian, but the African student is much stronger than the increase of size in a French university. So we do not want to be in a situation where we will refuse access to French university to African students that would like to go to France. So the idea is to push and support French university to set campuses in Africa. So that's one aspect. Now, regarding all the alumni of these exchanges, President Macron decided that they should be entitled for permanent access to France. So he gave instruction that all the alumni of the French system, which includes Gebre Mariam, are entitled to circulation visa and to access to France. So that's a way to better use. I mean, this human relation, which truly are the core and the base of this strong relation with the continent.
Wonderful. You know, as I was telling you, sharing with you before the interview, I had the honor and privilege of working for my country, Ethiopia, my country of origin in Paris, France, as UNESCO's permanent delegate. And I had also the opportunity to, with my naked eye, to see France, you know, with all its glory, art, museum and everything, and also the people, the mix itself, you know, all those people come from Algeria, Moroccans, you know, and Tunisians, and then all other people. Even I meet Portuguese people, and also a whole number. Even they number more than the Tunisian France people in France. So it's a melting pot. It's really a melting pot, etc. Of course, there are hiccups here and there. Of course, like integration and assimilation and the like. It's obvious, and also some people tie it with politics. Of course, some political parties see it as a trait, some don't see it as a trait, some really are convinced to live in a globalized world, others don't. So since we don't talk about internal politics, I'll just leave it as that, you know. It's obvious, but, you know. So what is really remarkable also is President Macron. He's a centrist, sometimes center-right, but centrist. His political ideology and outlook, his party, from the political spectrum. And the way he tried to, and the way he addressed the Rwandan genocide, that's remarkable. The way he addressed the Algerian issue of the 1950s, the Algerian Civil War, up to the independence of Algeria in 1962. If you could share that with our audience, that I would be very
No,
appreciative.
that's important.
Yeah.
He's maybe in capacity to do what others were not able to do.
Exactly.
Because he's a young president.
Exactly.
He's a young
Very young.
president. So he bears maybe less than others the weight of this past and his capacity to revisit the past. So in terms of the relation with Rwanda and the genocide against the Tutsis, the day of his election or soon after his election, he committed to bring a transparency to the role of France. So he put in place a commission of historians which had access to all the existing archives, which had not been the case before, to make a review and a report which concluded on the responsibility of France in this genocide, that by the cooperation we had with the former Biarimana regime and maybe the blindness of our policy regarding the intention of this regime, and so this allowed the president to acknowledge what had been a responsibility. Regarding Algeria, he has also started. But it's the relation is so dense, so tight, that it's maybe a bit more difficult.
It is.
But the intention is there, and I think that is the interest of France and Algeria to look into our past with sincerity, with transparency, openness, in order to build for the future. Because Algeria is our direct neighbors. The millions of French citizens of Algerian descent. So what I said for the whole continent is even more true with Algeria. So whatever the government would be on the two sides of Mediterranean Sea, the relation will remain very intense, tight, because of the human link, and we have to work in a common.
Very true.
Serene future.
Very true. I tried to read the report prepared about the Algerian issue, and the response might come eventually. It's lukewarm, anyhow, but in the case of Rwanda, of course, it was welcomed by Paul Kagame, really, in His Excellency's visit to Rwanda. And it takes, as leaders, it takes a bold leader always to solve problems.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
That's why I said really it's commendable that President Macron touched and solved literally an issue that has been, sometimes put aside at the back burner, or, sometimes, so that's what our statesmen are for. And I think credit goes to him. And most Ethiopians would absolutely will appreciate, and the Francophone experts and the like, what he's trying to do and what he did. And now we're moving to Sahel, of course. Sahel, the global terrorism, Al-Qaeda started, 9/11, you were in Washington, D.C. I was in Washington, D.C. as well. There was a whole lot of, issues involved. And then we moved to Al-Qaeda, spreading in the world, establishing its chapters, shall I say, and the like. And then we have the Islamic State in today's Iraq and Syria. That was a big issue as well. And now Islamic State also has its chapters, where else? In Africa as well. Starting from Somalia, the Horn, all the way to the Sahel. And the G5, the Sahel, France is taking a leading role, to step up. And if you could just elaborate on that and share with us the mission and goal of France and what its aspiration is in regard to maintaining peace and order in the Sahel region, the G5 countries of West Africa.
Okay. No, thank you for this question. That's an important element of the French foreign policy because of the involvement it represents in terms of financial cost, but human cost. I mean, more than 50 French soldiers have been killed in Sahel in the fight against terrorism. So you rightfully describe the phenomenon as an international one, but which in every situation with a national component. I mean, the Al Qaeda fighters or Islamic State fighters might receive some foreign assistance, but they're all nationals of the country in which they're active. So we monitored very closely the increase of the Al Qaeda presence in Sahel. Because it's a neighboring region. Also, if you speak only about Mali, we have more than 400,000 French citizens of Malian descent. So that's very important. And French were among the first victim of the installation of Al Qaeda in Western Africa. We had as early as 2007 some French tourists killed in Mauritania. We had an attack against our embassy in Nouakchott. And then for many reasons which are too long to explain in the time of our interview, but in 2013 the Malian authority called for immediate support because the Al Qaeda fighters were about to move toward the capital city of Bamako. At that time, President Hollande consulted with African head of state, with the UN Secretary General, and it appeared that we were the only one able to react in less than 48 hours. So this is what we did, and that was the Serval operation that was then transformed into a Barkhane operation when the threat changed to adapt to the threat. So what we've been trying to do is to work together with our African partners to assist them into putting in place a solution that cannot be solely military. You cannot defeat a terrorist movement only with military action. So there's the military component, and this is what we did directly with the Barkhane operation, but also together with our EU friends and allies, we organized the training of the national armies of the region, because the sustainable solution can only come from national army and not from foreign partners. So that was the first aspect. The second one is political. So there is no efficient fight against terrorism without a political component. And the political component in the case of Mali is the Algiers Agreement, and also together with a plan that the Malian government has to redeploy its administration in the country to prevent, to let the terrorist group alone providing social services to the population. And the third aspect is economic and development. I mean, the population must be given opportunity,
exactly,
especially for the youth when there is no job, no perspective, and that the only opportunity is a terrorist group which is offering you a regular salary and so on. So action, the fight against terrorism must have these three components. And once again, sorry to repeat myself, but just to make it clear, there is no purely military solution to a terrorist crisis. This is the same.
Exactly.
This is the same with your neighbors in Somalia. There is the involvement of AMISOM, but AMISOM alone cannot bring a sustainable solution if there is no political process, if there is no development.
Then a quick question, if I may, insert, if I may. Thank you, Your Excellency. Is there a change in French strategy? Because military solutions were, shall I say, I wouldn't say the priority, but the issue at hand before. But under the new Macron administration, when it's not viable and looking at the reality on the ground, political solutions has become a priority. A change, shall we say? There is a sort of a change of policy in French?
I don't think so, because we created the Coalition for Sahel 2 years ago with the same idea of pursuing activities and initiative in these three fields. No, what was important for us is in order to have a sustainable solution, was to empower our African friends and to strengthen not only the military capacity, but also the capacity to work together. And that's why when the countries of the region decided to create the G5, we decided to support them as much as we could, because the terrorist movement, they don't know the borders. So if you
just
start
move, yeah.
if you start terrorist activities in Mali and then you move to Niger or Burkina Faso, it means that armies of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso must have the capacity to operate together. And that was the whole point of the military component of the G5.
Yeah, well taken.
That we supported to get together with the UN, together with the EU,
In partnership,
and
yeah.
that's it. Now, we had decided to, as the threat is evolving, to adapt once again our dispositif, our presence on the soil, and to re-articulate the Barkhane operation. And now, due to the two coups in Mali, which were condemned by ECOWAS and African Union,
AU as well. Yeah.
so we have to adapt to this reality, to re-articulate. But President Macron has announced that Barkhane will leave Mali, but will remain in the region. So we remain in the region, and we continue to support the African forces, to support their capacity to act together. And also our priority will be to prevent the threat to go south, and to prevent the terrorist movement to initiate activities in the country of the coast.
Yes,
that's Benin, Togo, Ivory Coast, Ghana.
Even Ghana is worrying,
yes.
even, you know.
They all worry.
Yes. I mean, yes, I mean, it is really a watershed period, I would say, really. Sahel region and West Africa is going to be affected. The Sahel G5, I believe Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, yeah, and then Niger. Yes. The 5 countries, they have collaborated with them.
No, they need to continue working together.
They need to continue to work together. Yes. It's high time that African nations take charge of their own reality, of course with the support of partners like France and European countries, etc. But what is really worrisome is the spread of these radical groups. Let's take Ansar al-Islam, AI, they are in Burkina Faso, well placed. And then we have Boko Haram, of course. Believe it or not, they have extended their operation from Nigeria, northeast Nigeria, already to Niger. And then we have ISGS, Islamic State in the Greater Sahara. They are now in 3 countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. That's alarming. And then you have Jinim, we call it, that's the Al-Qaeda branch, and that is Jamaat Nusri al-Islam wa Muslimin. They are now in 3 countries. I think the team spirit is there, but African countries, are some of them in a weaker lack of leadership or the military discipline, organization. They still need help from the West, especially reconnaissance, satellite information on movement of the guerrilla groups. But we also need to understand, I think, from what is coming, say, the Malian regime, the military government. Their worry is that they need help, etc., etc. And what is still worrisome is the Wagner Group is operational. The Wagner Group, they were in a number of countries. And any comments on that, really? So
there are 2 aspects to what you said. First, I'd like to come back on, you mentioned Boko Haram and Lake Chad, and the way the countries of the region managed to contain this threat is a good example. So they created the MNJTF, which is a multilateral joint force of the 4 countries neighboring like Chad, and because of the real involvement of Nigeria, which is the major power of the region, and the initiative of Nigeria took the lead and committed more than $100 million of their own resources. To fund the regional force. And thanks to the cooperation of the regional force, of the 4 armies, I'm not saying the problem is solved, but it is contained. And also, I wish to underline on this occasion the role played by European Union. You mentioned the need for this country to benefit from relevant intelligence with drones and so on.
USA is involved.
So in the case in the case of Lake Chad and MNJTF, the EU is funding this capacity to the benefit of the regional armies. So capacities in ISR, capacities in helicopter transport, and so we can only be successful when there is a very well-defined, precise initiative of African partners with a strong leadership, and then this is where we can be efficient. Now regarding Mali, because of the internal political situation of the coup, which once again were
Two
condemned
times actually, yeah? Was it two times actually?
Twice, yes. Condemned by ECOWAS,
ECOWAS.
And by the African
Yeah,
Union.
and we have MINUSMA as well.
That's it.
Yeah,
So MINUSMA
yeah.
is on the ground. MINUSMA is playing a key role, and we hope that MINUSMA will be able to continue supporting the national Malian army. As for Wagner, we know it is a mercenary group. We know that mercenaries don't fight for the interest of the country where
Whoever
they're
pays
deployed, but first for their interest. And they paid, and as we see in other countries like Central African Republic,
Yes.
so they took control of some national resources.
Diamonds and everything.
They took control of even the custom administration to be sure they will be paid. So in the case of Wagner, what will make it difficult is for the United Nations and other partners to continue working with the Malian forces if they are supported with Wagner. Because it's very difficult to plan a joint operation, especially for a UN peacekeeping operation, if there are serious allegations of mass murder of civilian, human rights violation, which is fueling the terrorism instead of fighting terrorism. So as long as Wagner is present, it makes it almost impossible for us to continue working with the Malian army, and it will create a difficult situation for MINUSMA.
So Operation Barkhane, shall we expect it's going to be scaled down and maybe die?
So
or?
it will be rearticulated, as I'll say. So maybe there'll be a new name, because initially we had the Serval operation.
Yeah, originally.
And Serval was dedicated to fight terrorist group, to prevent them from consolidating a territorial stronghold, and it succeeded. So when the threat changed, our dispositif, our operation changed and was adapted, and it became Barkhane. Now that the threat has once more changed, that the terrorist group are not present in the same region, that they're now threatening the southern countries, we have once again to adapt our system. So we will have a new kind of operation, but as long as our African partner consider that our presence is useful, we'll continue to be on their side.
Great, thank you. Well elaborated, thank you. Now let's move to the number one, shall I say, news item in the world now. Everywhere you go, the crisis in Ukraine. And of course, France, as an active member of the European Union, as a founding member of the European Union, and NATO, of course, as an active member in NATO, had articulated its position and regarding the Russian presence or push into Ukraine. If you could just elaborate on the French policy regarding
Okay, thank you. There are two things in terms of the assessment of the situation. So we don't speak about the Ukraine crisis, but the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because this is what is happening currently. That's the reality on the ground, that Russian forces invaded Ukraine in violation of all the international principles, starting with the Charter of the United Nations. And we are in a war that we can call the recolonization war. As you know, Ukraine was part of Soviet Union, was under Russian domination in this context. Maybe the internal border of the Soviet Union were not meant to become international border, but they have become international border. And Russia recognized Ukraine as an independent country. But what we have seen just in 2014 was the first endeavor to annex part of Ukraine territory. So the Crimea Peninsula was annexed by the Russian. And now we see that their goal, by supporting this so-called independent republic, is also to continue taking control of part of the territory of a sovereign country. So this is a threat to the multilateral system, because no dispute should be solved by brutal force, and that's especially it resonates in Africa, where the first decision of the founding members of the OAU was to agree that the border shouldn't be
To
touched.
accept as it is.
The
yeah.
border shouldn't be touched.
Exactly,
If you start internationally, for many reasons, to change border by force, you put at threat all the global security. So this has direct consequences on EU. We have on our soil more than 5 million refugees from Ukraine. So 5 million Ukrainians escaped their territory. So that's the assessment of the situation. Now, regarding the policy, I mean, President Macron, before the war, I had many contacts with President Putin and tried his best to prevent the war. He's still in touch with President Putin since the war has started, the invasion has started. And our first priority is a ceasefire. This is the first priority. And then a negotiated solution, but in the respect of the Ukraine territorial integrity. So we cannot condone, I think no country can condone this blatant violation of sovereignty, of territorial integrity. And once again, this is a threat to a global security system.
Great. Yes, I mean, this is a very, very sensitive issue. I mean, no issue had challenged Europe, Western democracies as well, like this case. It's getting to be more complicated. More and more lethal weapons are being used. More and more weapons, are being, more and more strategies have been reviewed, and arms supplies have been given. Yes, you are right. It depends from the angle one sees it. Especially for myself, I'm in a tight position. Knowing all the polemics between the world, between invasion and crisis, one has to present it as it is, because the audience is also multi-audience. Yeah. So I'm very aware. I recognize the position of France is very clear. You call it invasion, and also the European, also Union as well as the USA. So how can we solve it? And here again, Russia says there are two issues. Negotiation is on it's one pillar, and sanctions is on the other. If you ask a Ukrainian or the Ukrainian government as a policy, they say that no negotiation. Russians would say no negotiations until and unless you lift the sanctions. If you ask the Ukrainian, or if you read the Ukrainian policy and the standpoint, it is that they say that the sanctions should be more harsher and harsher, because more and more sanctions are coming in. That should be in place, but we are ready to negotiate. So I think there is a stalemate between the two protagonists, the Russian government, the Russian state, and the Ukrainian state. How can we solve it? And secondly, the position of His Excellency President Macron is here again is unique, unlike his predecessors, in that first and foremost he has a very good working relationship with the American administration. Even with the previous Trump administration. I mean, he has his own skills, and I agree with Your Excellency. He's young, he's bold, not a whole lot of luggage to carry on. He's bold. And also with the current new President Joe Biden, he also has a good rapport, with the American leader. That also is an asset, I believe. And France is trying to play, a role of, I would say, a middleman to find a solution to this problem. So if you could comment on that, I would be appreciative. How can we solve it, and what roles does France play in a very tight position like this one?
Yes. No, as you said, President Macron tried also during all his first mandate to engage President Putin. There is no interest in trying to isolate Russia. Russia is an important member of the UN, a permanent member of the Security Council. And as I said, that our priority was to revive and strengthen the multilateral system. This is something we cannot do without Russia or against Russia. So Russia will remain a key player. Russia has national interest that should be fully understood. On the other side, and as I said, there's no way we can condone a military invasion of a neighbor in order to change the border or to change the regime, or such a violent, blatant interference in not only internal affairs but to direct attack to sovereignty and territorial integrity. So that's why the EU resorted to economic sanction to make the price of such a policy, such a brutal policy invasion, higher for the Russian authorities, and to convince them that their interest is to find a negotiated solution, because this is opposition from the early beginning. There is a need, as I just said, the urgent need is a ceasefire because of the suffering of the people, but also because the military operation can only lead to a dead end. And then a political negotiation on what can be negotiated, understanding that the territorial integrity cannot be negotiated.
Very true. Thank you for your elaborate. And my last question I have is, of course, to focus on Ethiopia once again, because beginning and end Ethiopia, you are here with our people, really, giving your service, your professionalism and expertise to bring the two people's cultures and countries together. It means a lot. So Ethiopia is also faced with a crisis, as you know, in the northern part of Ethiopia, in Tigray province or region, since November 2020. And also France, as part of the EU and the Western democracies, had also its own position, you know. Ethiopian followers, they follow the positions of every country. And if you ask an average Ethiopian, you know, the government of Prime Minister Abiy is a legitimate government. Why we call it legitimate? Because he was elected, serving 5 years. And then in the north, we have November 4th, that fateful day, November 3rd and 4th, the first shots, like all wars, First and Second World War, wherever you go, whether it's a Franco-German war or what have you, the first shot is decisive. That was shot by according to many Ethiopians, and according to evidence and witnesses by the former leadership of TPLF. And people are asking, you know, the Western world, and some are disappointed, angry, and saying that how could the European countries and France as well miss to find out and to say in confidence that the war was started by this group, because no other sovereign country, central government, would let it go unanswered, because that will be fatal to the country, because the country will just collapse. And they have made their objectives known. They said in vernacular languages, their supporters and everything, that they want to march to Addis and take over the government. That is a clear declaration of their aspiration. And Ethiopians are wondering, you know, because I have to present this because of the feeling of the people. How on earth could France, America, and other countries miss the point and even take a stand, no matter how bitter it is, the truth? This group is wrong, address your issues. Yes. Negotiate, yes. Ethiopians want negotiation, yes. But the truth has to be told. If you could comment on that, I do hope it will somehow answer, you know, give explanations to the position of France, to the Ethiopian people, to our audience.
Yes, I thank you for this question, because there is I feel sometimes a need for clarification. So that's I'm not very much comfortable when you say the West, because we all have our sensitivities, we all have our bilateral relation with Ethiopia. What is clear on our side, and that was quite obvious, is that there is a legitimate government. And before and after the Ethiopian elections, so President Macron was here on a state visit. He wouldn't have done so if we have doubt about the legitimacy. And since the beginning of the crisis, France only issued 3 public statements. So when we have something to say to the Ethiopian government, President Macron speaks to Prime Minister Abiy, or I go and meet people in charge. We don't do public diplomacy. So that's we don't lecture people. Now we have. I come back to the West in the sense that all our partners inside the EU, plus the American, Canadian, Australian, whoever you want, are convinced that there is no military solution to this crisis. There cannot be a military solution. So the two sides tried to prevail. None of them was able to prevail. And the Prime Minister took the bold decision to give priority to a negotiated solution.
Even unilateral ceasefire, even.
That's it. That's what I'm referring to.
2 times. Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
So that's the humanitarian truce, but also the decision to not to send the ENDF to continue the military operation, to stop at the administrative border.
Give peace a chance.
Give
Exactly.
peace a chance, and then the end of the state of emergency, then the beginning of the national dialogue, at least appointing commissioners, and all this goes in the right direction, and should be supported. So that's a key element. Now for the final settlement and the agreement that has to be found, it's only the Ethiopians know what they wish. So it's not for the foreign partners to say the final settlement need to include this, and this. So this is for the Ethiopian to decide. And very last point, you mentioned the crisis in the north, and especially Tigray. But what is very important to keep in mind is the suffering of the population in neighboring regions.
Absolutely.
If you go to
Amhara.
northern part of Amhara, if you go to Afar,
exactly.
you'll meet people who directly suffered from this crisis, with destruction, looting, with also problem of access to food. So what is now very clear for the partners of Ethiopia is that population suffering in Afar and Amhara must be taken into account, must be supported, as well as the population suffering in Tigray. So we should not, and we are not differentiating among Ethiopians. The Ethiopians suffering, and they all deserve our support.
Yeah, true. And you hear me loud and clear. That's the issue among the Ethiopian population. People read, people want peace in the country, people want a solution, and they look at also, in a way, to France and to America and to other countries, be a part of that. But people feel that laissez-faire kind of a thing, not wanting to take a stand, even telling the truth what it is. And that also reflected in the, 11 times, in the Security Council, the issue of Ethiopia has been brought. And people feel the perpetrator and the victim are together, because there is this kind of hesitancy to call a spade, the truth to be told. And it is in that sense that there is a kind of disappointment. But of course, at the end of the day, Ethiopians have to deal with ourselves,
yes,
and find a solution.
No, we continue to support as much as we can a political solution. So we said since the early beginning that we are supporting the action of the African Union.
Yeah, so
Obasanjo, he was here last week.
You're going to come this week, I think, maybe.
Last week he shuttled between Mekele and Addis. So he's working on confidence building measures, which is the first step. Then after this, there have to be a discussion on an agreed, not two unilateral ceasefire, but a negotiated end of conflict. Then it will be up for the Ethiopians to decide.
Absolutely.
Under which condition the TPLF can join the national inclusive dialogue, and that's and ultimately the solution is only in the hands of Ethiopians.
Absolutely.
It's not for us to decide.
Absolutely.
But we are supporting as much as we can. We are supporting the humanitarian action, assistance, also to Amhara and Afar in need. Supporting the efforts of mediation. So we saluted the unilateral ceasefire and called for the other party to reciprocate. So we're not at the forefront, we're not the key actor, but we're supportive as much as we can.
Very good. Thank you. And one last point that let me turn the table around. Is there anything that you'd like to say to our audience, really? If you want to address the audience about any issue to wrap up our interview.
No, just that I was a bit surprised, but maybe it's in Addis, not in the rest of Ethiopia, to see this criticism that you echoed regarding the West.
Because I have to ask it.
No, you do your job. I'm not complaining. That's no, and that just to understand that as we see Ethiopia as a unique partner for us in Africa. We consider that we are also, in a way, I would like the Ethiopian to understand, we are also a unique partner to Ethiopia. That, as I like to put it, this year where we celebrate the 125th year of diplomatic relation, France had never the pretension or never tried to be a dominant partner, but it is very best to be always a relevant partner. So that's what we intend to continue. That's the reason why all year long we'll celebrate one different aspect of this unique relation. Anytime on any subject commemorating the past, but not for the sake of the past, but to build on it and have a joint and common project. So we're here for 125 years, and we'll be there for
continue for another 100 years.
Even more.
More, even more. Yeah. Have you ever been to other parts of Ethiopia? I know maybe not to the war-torn area, but to other parts.
No, I
you
mean
travel a lot.
Yes, a lot, because I know that Addis is not Ethiopia.
Yes.
I was just last month in Jijiga, but I've been to Diredwa, to Harar. I've been also to the south, where we have many projects. So I try and visit most of the part in order to understand the country, because Ethiopia, I mean, Addis is 4 to 5 million. Ethiopia is 150.
Paris is not only France, but it's part of France, and France is beautiful. Toulouse, Marseille, you go everywhere. Every part, they're Provence. They have their own unique characters and qualities. So well said, Your Excellency.
So there's still many places I need to visit. And,
yes, and we do hope
still have
to
a
visit
bit more
more.
time to do it.
Absolutely. Your Excellency, I would like really to thank you on behalf of Nahoo TV, on behalf of my colleagues here, on behalf of the audience that watch us regularly. It's one of those prominent radio stations, TV stations of Ethiopia, based on the freedom of the press. It's a private institution that tells you a story, because we were not able to do that in the past. So we look forward to the expansion and the deepening of private press and the like, the broadcast as well as the print media and the like, the social media as well. I would like to wish you all the best, really. You have been here a year and a half, but you have still halfway or not less than halfway. And I really appreciate what you do. Allow me to say that. And I wish you well, and I wish you success in your efforts. Your number one job is definitely is to bring what? The two peoples together. I wish you success, and the two governments together as well. And in that, we'll follow you, what you are doing.
Thank you.
And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
No, thank you very much for this invitation. And once again, very much honored to be the first guest of this diplomatic corner.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Merci beaucoup.